As crazy as week 13 was, we actually had no new eliminations. That it was very interesting to see a lot of teams fall out of the playoff field, or we assume they're going to fall out of the playoff field. We'll find out when those playoff rankings come out tonight. But yeah, we had a lot of big things happen, but those teams that got knocked out, they've still got a chance. There's still a path. So we're going to go through every team that is still alive, and I'm going to tell you their path, what they need to have happen for them to get into the college football playoff. And we'll go conference by conference. First, we'll start with the group of five and the non-power four teams. So Army, Tulane, Boise State, UNLV. So we're still going to have Army, Tulane in the American Conference Championship game. That game is set. And the winner of that game still has a shot. The loss to Notre Dame hurts Army, but again, if they win, it keeps them from, I think, it keeps the American from really having any potential chance to pass the Big 12 for an automatic spot in the playoff. But they're still alive if the Mountain West, if Boise State loses a game, if like Colorado State winds up winning the Mountain West, if something crazy like that happens, there is still a chance for the American to get in. But I think they're going to have to take the Mountain West spot. They're not going to be able to take the Big 12 spot. Boise State, UNLV still very much alive there in the Mountain West, and they'd be ranked high enough if they were to win their conference. Again, a lot of people were talking about Colorado State. Even if they were to win the Mountain West, they've got too many losses. They're not going to get in. That would be great news for the American. That would mean the American would get in. And I think that Notre Dame already has their spot locked up. Even if they were to be upset by USC, they're going to be in. Unless they were to lose by 30, 35 points, something like that crazy happens, Notre Dame is in. They are in. I think they're ranked high enough that they can afford a loss. I don't see Notre Dame with two losses dropping behind, these three-loss SEC teams when they were as a one-loss team ahead of the two-loss SEC team. So Notre Dame is in. I think you can go ahead and, if they win their game against USC, I think you can go ahead and plan on hosting a playoff game as well. So Notre Dame should be right there between 5 and 8, and again hosting that playoff spot in the first round. All right, so let's go to we'll start with the ACC. So SMU and Miami are still in control, and let's talk about the path for each team. So for SMU, obviously if they win the ACC, they'll be in. If they win out, they'll be in. I do believe, though, and again, we'll learn a lot tonight with these rankings, but if they are ranked ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss, I do believe that a good showing against Miami in the ACC championship could keep them in. I think they could still be in the playoff if that's a close game. And that goes both ways. If Miami has an even better chance of still getting in because they're ranked higher. But I think if that ACC championship game is close, the loser of that game has a very good chance to still make it into the college football playoff. If the game's not close, I think the loser is probably out, and that's when we start talking about a three-loss SEC team or something like that. Needing some help will be Clemson. So Clemson, they need Miami to lose to Syracuse. That would put them in the ACC championship game. Then if they win that, they're in. As far as getting an at-large spot, I kind of draw the line at Clemson. I don't think any team behind them has a chance. So that includes South Carolina, which we'll talk about in just a second. But there could be enough chaos. Let's say that Miami loses. Well, no, that would put them in the ACC championship. I'm trying to find a path for them without winning the ACC. Let's say SMU loses, and then Miami blows out SMU in the ACC championship. Clemson jumps ahead of SMU. They would need Alabama and Ole Miss potentially to lose a game, or maybe Indiana gets upset by Purdue. There are some paths out there for Clemson, but really they need to win the ACC. That they need Miami to lose. They need to win the ACC championship. That's really the realistic path for them. But again, there is a slight chance they could get in as an at-large, but they will need some help. And you do wonder, if they beat South Carolina and they do it convincingly, could they, with two losses, pass Alabama and Ole Miss, three-loss teams out of the SEC? I think that's possible. I think it could happen. So there is a chance for Clemson. A couple different ways they could get in, but they definitely will need some help. We've got Arizona State, Iowa State. As we go to the Big 12 now, these teams are in control, so they'll win the tiebreakers if we have a 3 or 4 way tie. If they win their games this weekend, they will be in the Big 12 championship. They win that, they'll be in. Simple as that. There's no way the Big 12 gets 2 teams in at this point. It just cannot happen. So you've got to win the Big 12 to get in. These teams in control, but how about BYU and Colorado? They're going to need some help. I believe that Colorado's actually at the bottom in the tiebreakers. So Colorado would need both, or they would need 2 of the other 3 teams to lose. So again, we're talking about 4 teams tied here. They would need, between BYU, Iowa State, and Arizona State, they would need 2 of them to lose. BYU, I think, just needs 1 of them to lose, then they would get in there. So, it's crazy in the Big 12. We'll see who makes it in there, but BYU just needs a little bit of help. They need to win their game on Saturday. Colorado needs a little bit more help, but they are definitely still alive. And with all the upsets we've seen, we could for sure see some more here in rivalry week, and we normally do. So I would not count out BYU or Colorado. And again, if they get to the Big 12 championship game, all they got to do is win it. Let's go now to the Big 10. So really, nothing's changed here. Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, they're all in control still. Unless there is a shocking ranking for Indiana, like if they're way down in the rankings behind Alabama and Ole Miss, I mean, it would take a huge fall for Indiana to completely fall out. Again, with Alabama and Ole Miss losing, that really pretty much, in my opinion, locked in Indiana, unless they were to lose to Purdue. Obviously, they can't lose that game, but like I said, unless there is a big surprise in these rankings, Indiana should be ranked high enough that they're safe. They're in control. Obviously, Oregon and Ohio State, they're locked in. I don't see any way that even if they lose on Saturday, they're locked in. They're getting in. And Penn State, I think, is locked in. I don't think a loss, they lose another game, I still think they're in pretty good shape. I think they should still be in there. So, really the only team that could drop out from these 4 is Indiana, and that would be, again, if they lose to Purdue, which is highly unlikely. So the Big 10 most likely is going to get 4 teams in the playoff. How about the SEC? Well, you've got 4 teams still in control: Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas, and Georgia. The path is obviously much tougher for Texas A&M. They've got to beat Texas. That will get them to the SEC championship game. Then they would have to beat Georgia in the SEC championship. I don't think that beating Texas will be enough. I don't think that's going to get them in. Georgia is in. As long as they beat Georgia Tech, I think they're in. Even if they were to, let's say, lose to Texas in the SEC championship, I think they're going to be ranked high enough that they still get in. Don't think they're going to be penalized for playing in a conference championship. Texas might be locked in, unless they were to get embarrassed by Texas A&M. I think they're in really good shape. I think they're ranked high enough that, again, a loss there might not be the worst thing in the world, because then you don't have to play in the SEC championship. And I do think they're ranked high enough that they're safe. So I think Texas and Georgia, well, Texas I think is locked in. Georgia's locked in with a win over Georgia Tech. Tennessee obviously locked in with a win over Vanderbilt. They cannot make it to the SEC championship, but that, again, might not be such a bad thing. As long as they take care of Vandy, they will be in. Texas A&M in control, but their path is definitely the toughest, having to go through Texas and then Georgia in the SEC championship. But they can get in. They absolutely can get in, and they are in control of their own destiny, even with the loss to Auburn. So how about teams needing help? I think that's Alabama and Ole Miss. Unless they're ahead of SMU, which they could be, we'll find out with these rankings, then I think these 2 teams are the first teams out of the playoff. That means they need someone ahead of them. They need SMU to lose. They need Indiana to lose. They need someone to lose. And the big question is going to be, if SMU loses to Miami in the ACC championship, do they drop out? And does Alabama or Ole Miss take their spot? That is going to be the big thing to watch heading into conference championship weekend. I think Miami's probably safe because the committee loves Miami. So I think even if they were to lose to SMU, they would be in. They would not drop behind Alabama and Ole Miss. So that's something to watch. And that seems to be what the battle is here. It seems to be the loser of Miami, SMU versus Alabama or Ole Miss. That seems to be what the battle is going to be for that final spot. And we'll see what this committee does. Obviously, if they want TV ratings, more people are going to be interested in Alabama than SMU. And we're going to find out, do they dare put in a 3-loss team over a team that went 11-1 in the regular season? Again, that's coming down the road. We could get more chaos this weekend. It may not matter. Alabama could lose to Auburn. SMU could get upset. Miami could get upset. So there are still, if you think this thing's just going to go a certain way, I think last week told you that that's not how it works. College football, does not always go, it does not usually go exactly how we think it's going to go. So expect some more chaos this weekend, and we will take a look at that playoff picture next week, where I think going into the conference championship games, we'll pretty much know what the playoff is going to look like based off of the different results in those games. But again, that's the updated playoff picture. Back to South Carolina. I know people have been talking about them. I do not think they can jump Alabama and Ole Miss because they lost to them head-to-head. All three have 3 losses. So that's why I don't have South Carolina in this conversation. Unless the committee does something that I don't expect them to do tonight, and they put South Carolina ahead of one of these teams. If they do that, then all right, we'll bring South Carolina back from the dead. Of course, they got to beat Clemson. That's going to be a tough one coming up on Saturday. But that's the way I see the playoff picture right now. Again, give me your thoughts, your comments down below.